there's a deviation, from.
We'll make it work.
Yeah.
All right. So I see Derek. So I'm going to call the meeting of the Boston Region Metropolitan Planning Organization ANF Committee to order. This is the notice of non-discrimination. You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. I will read the virtual meeting guidelines. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. Participants can mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. You can find this by clicking on the participants button at the bottom of the screen or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair, which is me, will then call on participants. If you're on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact Erin McGuire via the chat box, via email at emaguire@ctps.org or by phone at 857-702-3681. I'm going to read the accessibility statement. This meeting is being recorded. It is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 Level AA standards and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodation to participate fully in this meeting, please contact Erin McGuire via the chat box, via email at emaguire@ctps.org, or by calling 857-702-3681. Thank you. My name is Brian Kane. I am the Executive Director of the MBTA Advisory Board. Sylvia, can you please do a roll call to make sure we have a quorum?
Yes, of course. MassDOT.
Oh, Derek Cravat here from MassDOT Planning.
Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
Eric will not be here today.
Yep. Regional Transportation Advisory Council.
Hunter Diggins here.
And Metro West Regional Collaborative, City of Framingham.
I don't see Derek, but he will join at some point.
Okay, that's roll, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sylvia. So we're going to skip staff saying hello at this point because we just want to start getting through stuff. So we've done introductions. I'll now move on to agenda item 2, which is public comment. If there's any member of the public who would like to make a comment, please use the raise hand function at this time, and we will recognize you to make your comment. I see no one participating. Oh, the inestimable Brad Rawson. Brad, we'd love to hear from you. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Brian. Good morning, Len. Good morning, staff. Hey, Derek. Thanks so much. I'm going to be doing a little bit of multitasking with a mayor's meeting starting in 15 minutes here, but I think this is really, really important. Really appreciate all the hard work that staff and members of this committee have been performing. I want to say very clearly that we have a lot of work ahead of us, and the operations plan is a critical step to continuing to improve transparency, predictability, user experience for staff, board, and stakeholders on things like LRTP and TIP process. We all have been pushing the pushing the stone uphill like Sisyphus and getting run over by it over and over again year after year. We have to continue to gain efficiency, ensure communication protocols are followed, that agency information is shared in timely fashions so that all of us can honor the public trust and make investments that are consistent with our values, our stated agency priorities, and the guidance coming from FHWA, from FTA, from MassDOT, from MBTA and others. I think we have a really unique moment ahead of us, and I'm really hoping that we're going to be able to finalize the operations plan and have a better experience with TIP and LRTP cycle in the year ahead. So let's keep the faith. Thanks, everybody.
Brad, thank you. And thank you for your reference to ancient Greek deities. Always appreciate a classical reference on a Thursday morning. We are all moving to be less Sisyphean. And I look forward to the staff trying to spell that in the record. Are there any other public comments at this time? Okay, we'll move on to our first agenda item or I should say our third agenda item, which is a discussion of the operations plan final as to the executive director compensation and evaluation. This was provided. And I just wanted to introduce Tegan, who will run through this. I have a few comments, but Tegan, why don't you take it away?
Sure. I can be very brief. Silva is bringing up the redlined document, so redline version of the document. But based on the feedback from the last meeting, the key changes we made to this document, if you can scroll down to the second and third page where you see the red lines. Essentially, the primary feedback on this was that it felt a little overly structured or formal to submit a formal memo to the full board for review and vote to approve it. So the committee members last time asked to kind of pull back on this level of requirement and instead keep it as conversations with the A&F committee, which then can, of course, be brought to the board if there's any reason to bring them to the board. But this write-up now does not require board approval of a memo, and then just kind of cutting out some of the additional details that really aren't needed at this point in these last couple of bullets, but it doesn't change anything about the intention of the document or the language in it. I think that's enough of a summary, but I'm happy to answer any more questions or if people want me to go into it in any more detail.
No, that's great, Tegan. Thank you. Let me just, I wasn't here for the last one, so let me just make a few comments if I might. I think this is fantastic. I love the fact that it's going to be driven by kind of a neutral third party outside person who is theoretically knowledgeable in the marketplace of where folks are. We as the A&F committee, and I'm going to look at Haral's picture on my screen, need to make sure we budget sufficient funds to do that on an annualized basis, or excuse me, on a 3 or 6 year basis. I think we should start as soon as possible. I would like to start this in 24, and I would like to do this market-driven evaluation, not just for the executive director role, but for all roles at CTPS. I think we've seen a lot of staff retention issues. A lot of that has to do with money. And a lot of that has to do, frankly, with folks going to MassDOT. Completely understandable. But I want to just make sure that we are doing everything we can as an A&F committee, as financial stewards, to attract and retain the best folks we can for this region. I would like to kind of ask, what is MassDOT's role in setting compensation now for staff or for job postings? And what can we do to make that less sort of individualistic, less one by one, job by job, and more kind of categorical, if you know what I'm saying? And you don't have to answer right now. But I think we should definitely move that forward. It doesn't have to be through the operations plan, but I think it's important that we at least make CTPS positions competitive with implementing agencies, shall we say, getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. And we have to just make sure that we are compensating our folks at least at market level, at least at the same as other folks in 10 Park Plaza, because we can't really keep losing folks and expect to be doing the best work that we can, that our elected officials around us and that the public demand. So I would suggest that as we budget for the first evaluation of the executive director position in 2024, assuming this passes, let's also budget sufficient funds to do that for everybody. I know it was recently done. I know there's a lot of work that has been done, so maybe we don't need to do the full-blown thing. I will leave the details to you, but I do want to figure out a way to make this less sort of one-offs and more categorical. I don't think we necessarily need every single job posting, for instance, to be approved by 15 different people. We got to just find a way to make this easier. That's comment one. Comment two, the document references contractual obligations. Is that in reference to a theoretical employment agreement for the executive director, or are there other contracts in place right now?
I believe the contractual obligation in this is referencing the contract that we have with MassDOT, which allows for the pass-through of those federal funds to the agency. So it's in the contract with Mass DOT that Mass DOT reviews and approves salary changes for all of the MPOs in the state. And I mean, Derek, feel free to step in if you want to clarify any further than that, but that's our understanding of the contract.
And when was that contract made? Who signed it? When does it expire? Can we see a copy of that, please?
So it's annual that we sign it. That particular part of the contract has been in the contract for a very long time. I don't know exactly when that happened, but yes, we do renew the contract annually and sign it.
Okay, can I get a copy of that?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
And my final thing is just on the goal setting piece. I would suggest that when we hire the third party person to do the market evaluation, we also include that they do the initial goal setting based on market driven stuff they see out there. I think we can sit around and come up with some goals for you, Tegan, but I think it'd be better and probably more efficient if a third party did it at least the first time. And so I would just suggest that as we budget for that, we add scope and money for that too. Those are my 3 comments.
So,
Len, go ahead, please.
so I'm about to take off. So should I not bother trying to come back, Ryan? So what I'm hearing, this is over at 10:45.
I would never tell you to not come back anywhere.
Oh, but the meeting's going to continue until 11:30, or is
No,
it
I think we're going to
over?
lose the quorum at 10:45, so you're probably better off not coming back.
Okay, all right. See y'all. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Len.
So, bye.
All right, so I think we are good on the employment piece. Derek, do you have any issues, questions, comments, concerns?
No, that all sounds good. Yeah, we can certainly get you that contract. I think everything Tegan mentioned was accurate. There is contract language about approving merit increases, that everything's in line with the regulations and sort of payroll practices of each agency or RPA. So yeah, you'll see that language in the contract as well, but everything sounds accurate. So
Great, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we'll move on to communications norms.
Thank you.
Was this discussed the last time, Tegan?
It was discussed last time, and while Silva brings up the document, I'll say that the primary feedback that we heard at the last meeting, or the main discussion, was around what are the next steps if there is a claim that there's some behavior that is not consistent with these norms. And so we conferred a little bit to develop the following language, which just highlights that first, there is an opportunity to contact the person who has been identified as being inconsistent with these norms.
Yeah.
And then if that inconsistency or violations continue, then there are some suggestions here for the vice chair and chair to consider, which could be asking for a public apology or publicly censure the individual. And then the other being contacting the primary seat holder to inform them that the designee or the alternate is in violation of the norms, and ask that a new designee or alternate be appointed. That is all.
Yeah, that's what my organization does. Since the members are generally designees of an elected official, if there are issues, we just contact the chief executive officer and let them know. And then it's sort of their issue to deal with. If that person continues to want to have that designee represent them, all we can do is make them aware of the situation and politely suggest. But yeah, this makes perfect sense to me. So when I was reading it, I just had a couple of other things that sprang to mind. Just in terms of the wording, can we just be consistent when talking about members, staff, designees, alternates? And I know there's going to be an editing process. I get that, but just as part of that, let's just make sure that we're consistent with the language throughout, consistent with capitalization, consistent with all that stuff. And I know there's people that are much better editors than I will ever be who will do that work. And then 2 other things sprang to mind. Coming out of this, I think we need a public comment policy. That doesn't have to be part of the MOU or, of the operations plan, but I think it should definitely be something that the board adopts. And I would be happy to have the ANF committee kind of try to start writing that, and we can base it on tons of public comment policies that are out there. Things like, you can't bring bullhorns to MPO board meetings and all that stuff, all the stuff that we've seen, or at least I've seen in other public meetings, just things like that, and just trying to make the same levels of decorum for public comment as this attempts to make for board members. And then just on the topic of Brad, I'll get to you in 1 second. I think we also need to just make sure, and you should check with Margie at MAPC on this one. Make sure that we are properly covered in terms of applicable harassment policies. Something that we could consider is whenever a new person takes their seat or a new designee takes the seat, they're given a welcome packet, which includes all these policies, and they can be boilerplate from the Commonwealth, straightforward. We've all seen them. But I think it's just important that they get these and they're made aware that they are going to be expected to abide by these. And it just reinforces these norms so that folks know that they can't be sexually harassing people or misogynist or racist or all of the ists that we want to avoid. Brad Rawson, please go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Brian. This is a much more benign and small scale observation than what you just talked about. But in terms of public comment SOPs, one thing that I have observed during the pandemic era here is that we sometimes have relatively unclear processes of how long public comment may be invited for. And knowing people have varying degrees of technology at their fingertips, sometimes if you're not quick enough on the draw, you'll actually miss an important moment to provide public comment. And I think that can contribute to awkwardness during the meeting. It can force the board and the staff to go backwards in the agenda instead of moving slowly through. I think it can discourage the public from commenting or from showing up at the next meeting and attempting to do so. It's hard for me to gauge whether this is just like a stylistic and facilitation thing versus something that rises to the level of identifying an SOP. You mentioned other kind of best practices out there, Brian. So please just do keep that in mind. I have missed opportunities on a personal level, and I assume if I have, then there are others who are less comfortable raising their voices and using the technology, and they may be discouraged as well. So please do just kind of keep that in mind as a small thing.
Very important, Brad. Thank you. Yes, we do need to figure that out. And I think as part of a public comment policy, we should have both internal and external guidelines, guardrails, whatever you want to call them, that make it clear when it is appropriate, and also what the presiding officers should do in those cases to ensure that it is understood that folks that there's a time to comment publicly. So yes, thank you for that. I agree. So Tegan, I'm going to look at you real quick. Does the harassment stuff that I mentioned make sense?
Yeah, we can follow up on that. We're looking at kind of renewing our look at what orientation materials are for board members. So we can follow up with that and ensure that we're providing the materials that we need to provide.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just know for my organization, we have stuff that we just give people, and it's, I think we all understand that not everyone's going to read them, but at least if they're provided with them, it gives the organization a little bit of sense of cover that they've been provided. So I think that's important. Let me see what else I wrote down. Derek, do you have any issues on this one?
No, everything looks good and in line with what we discussed at the last meeting. So
Yeah, this is great.
looks good. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Let's move on to agency information sharing. Who has this one? This one, me?
This one is assigned to you and the
good.
agenda. And I think Silva can bring up the document if you'd like to walk through it. If you'd like to defer, feel free to do so.
No, why don't I give some broad background or whatever, and then I'll turn it over to folks much more eloquent than me. I think it's fair to say that we have a information sharing bit of a vacuum sometimes. And we had an entire subcommittee dedicated to this, talking about the need to, the ad hoc committee last year that I think Derek, you were on, I was on. Just trying to figure out the best way to get information out to people so that folks feel like they can make informed decisions with relevant information. And I think the last tip process was better, but I still felt frustrated myself and uninformed at times on making decisions. So I think what we're trying to do here is just give people more relevant information to allow them to feel empowered and knowledgeable in their voting. Well, with that said, it's never going to be possible to have perfect information. Yeah, okay. I've just been alerted that Brad is not a committee member, so we have lost our quorum. Now, if I hadn't been alerted to that, I would have continued, because a quorum exists as long as no one questions the presence of a quorum. Taken, but you're a better person than I. So I don't know, Brad, you want to just adjourn until we can take this up next time?
Brian, I'm just here as a board member in support and not a committee member. So totally leave this to everybody's perspective here.
Yep. Sure. So Brad, you, as far as I'm concerned, you just volunteered to be part of the committee. So you'll be appointed soon, but we can't do that today. So
So you gonna swear me in on the NACTO guidebook, Brian? I've got one right behind me.
That should be the new Book of Common Prayer, as far as I'm concerned. All right, so we are going to adjourn at this time until we have a quorum. Let's see. Does anyone know if? No, we don't know that, do we? Anyone know if Dennis is going to join? Has anybody heard from Dennis? No,
I'm not aware of it, no.
he usually calls in around this time. All right, unfortunately, we'll have to adjourn. Next time, we'll take up the information sharing. What else can we look forward to next time, Tegan?
Well, next time we were hoping to begin to talk about the full document, assuming that we would have gotten through the information sharing today. So perhaps could we suggest some additional meetings in May than the 2 that we're currently planning on to try to move through this?
Yeah, I think we have to.
We also have the financial update. I mean, we are generally in good financial standing, but we do have a financial update that we would like to share with this committee.
Understood. All right, Derek, why don't you get out your calendar here?
Sounds good.
So we're scheduled for May 4th, is that correct?
Yes, I believe the 2 board meeting dates, May 4th, and I'm just trying to bring up the month.
The 18th, okay. Extra points on May 4th for anyone who brings Star Wars paraphernalia. Okay. If you dress your pet as Baby Yoda, you will just win the ultimate prize. I don't even know what that is, but it can't be topped. So I have tried to get my dog to wear a Yoda costume, but it's not pretty. Okay, so the 4th. All right, so can we bring this back on the 4th? And can you maybe put a draft of the full operations plan together without this section, or?
Yes, we already have one in the works. I guess what I would expect, though, is that it might take a couple of conversations to talk about the full document, because there are still some outstanding questions. There's the timeline and there's the maintenance of the document. So wondering if you'd be willing to meet, perhaps the 4th, 11th, and 18th, or the 4th, 18th,
Yes.
25th.
So I'd suggest we meet the 11th. I have an 11 a.m. that day. Can we do this at 9 or 9:30?
We can.
Does that work for you?
That works for me. Yeah.
Okay. So why don't I'm gonna put a hold on my calendar for 9 a.m. on the 11th. So we'll finish the sections next time, and we'll begin to look at a draft of the overall thing. On the 11th, we'll continue that discussion, and I hope on the 18th we can vote on it.
Okay. We will communicate with the
That's good.
committee appropriately.
Okay, yeah, let's book 2 hours on the 11th from 9 to 11 for fun.
I will double check with staff that there's no conflict with that, but for now, consider that what we will pursue, and then we'll follow up and confirm with the committee.
Thank you. All right, my apologies again to everyone for screwing up the timing on this, but we'll see you next week. And until then, may the 4th continue to be with you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.
Hi, everyone.